Hi, and welcome again to this latest episode of the Plata Ward 4 Update Podcast. This is Dave Jenkins, the Plata Town Council member from Ward 4, and your host for this podcast and video. These are now available also on YouTube and YouTube Music. Tonight, I just want to talk about one of my passions and frankly pet peeves. I'll apologize up front by saying this is probably going to sound like I'm whining a little bit, but hopefully you'll see why with some information I'm going to pass on and some personal experiences. So let's get right into it. I'm going to go to this next slide and talk about, try to give you a U.S. or national perspective, narrow down to a Maryland's perspective, and then Charles County about traffic accidents, fatalities, both drivers and pedestrians. So this is a slide from the Governor's Highway Safety Association about their data about U.S. drivers killed as well as pedestrians from 2019 through the pandemic until recently of 2023. So you can see it kind of went down a little bit from 2022 until 2023. But look at the significant increase from 2019 through 2021, the heart of the pandemic. And the theory is, even though there was less traffic on the highways due to the pandemic, folks felt like they could speed. So as a result, you have a lot more accidents. And I'll get back to this later about how speed kills on highways. So you can see, for me, and maybe you agree or don't, but this is a pretty staggering number when you think about it. And we'll get into more of these numbers as we move forward. Let's go to my next slide to talk about how the U.S. does with respect to other nations in the world. Again, this is from an organization called Smart Growth America, and I'll provide some of these references and resources in my notes as well. So you can see that since 2011, as compared to U.S. as compared to China, and Brazil and even India, which have, particularly China and Brazil, which have much larger populations than we do, we are the worst performer with respect to road traffic fatalities or deaths. And this information, even though it came from Smart Growth America, this source of information is a global status report on road safety in 2023. So you can see the U.S. Does not do well with respect to traffic deaths as compared to much larger countries. Like India and China are the largest countries in the world with respect to population. So that's a pretty sobering statistic. Let's look now at Maryland. And again, the next number of slides are from the Maryland Zero Deaths program from the state of Maryland through the State Highway Administration. So this chart is just trying to show you from 2019 through 2023 fatal crashes, injuries, property damage, and then total crashes, and then all fatalities at the bottom, and the number of total injured for each year. So you can see it increased from 2019 all the way through 2023, and the 5-year average for crashes is 535. So that's a pretty sobering number when you think about it. I think Maryland now has a population of 6 million maybe. And again, look at the injury crashes, how they average out over the 5-year period. And then property damage, we don't necessarily always think about that. Not only damage to the vehicles, but other properties and buildings and highways and things. And then obviously just the total number of crashes in that 5-year period and the average. And then that second line at the bottom, total of all fatalities. Again, it averages 572 over a 5-year period. That's an average over a 5-year period. Again, I just get very numbed and stunned by these kinds of numbers. Let's go to a next category, and this is, again, and I'll get back to this in a minute, and a chart that talks about Maryland's fatalities and crashes and injuries regarding people speeding and aggressive driving. And I'll relate to you a couple of personal stories, and I'm sure we all have our our own story to tell as well. So you can see fatal crashes from speeding or aggressive driving goes from 37 in 2019 to all the way up to 55 by year 2023. The chart column's a little offbeat, but you can see it's offline. It's about 2023, but the 5-year average is 42. Again, the injuries over the years from 2019 to 2023, property damage, and of course the total of all crashes. And then look at the total of all fatalities. Again, a rise over the 5-year period through 2023 from 2019. And then it averages 46 a year. And again, that's just focusing on the speeding aspect of it. Now, I know these numbers all depend upon how they report these, but right now it's the latest information or the most accurate information that I've been able to gather. So let's go on to the next chart. Pedestrians, or they call it pedestrian on foot. Again, the 5-year average from 2019 through 2023, 124 in 2019 increased to 153. That's, again, startling to me. It averages 133 over a 5-year period. You can see the injury crashes. Then again, you can see property damage. Then the total crashes, and then again down to the second to last line at the bottom, the total of all fatalities over a 5-year period goes from 124 to 159. It's 135. Again, I keep saying that, but it's when you see it in black and white, and then you have friends who have been injured riding a bike or walking, it really strikes home. And so you read these articles, and you can certainly understand, at least from my view, how it really affects me and why this is important. I believe very important as a public safety issue. Let's go to the next one then about bicycles. And again, full disclosure, I used to be a runner, as you may know, but with the knee arthritis, I don't do that anymore, but I do walk and I ride a bike. So these numbers are very personal for me as I ride and walk a lot. So again, for bicycles, again, 2019 through 2023, from a low of 10 in 2019 to 15, so it's about 12 over a 5-year period. That's 12 too many. Again, the same numbers with respect to crashes, property damage, total crashes. That's pretty interesting. The total crashes is, I guess, in a car and a bike is total is like 850 starting out and goes to 838. So 778 crashes. That means there's a car and a bike involved. That's a lot. Again, the fatalities is still the same number as the first number on top. Averages about 12 a year. I suspect that may go up in the last 2 years, but I don't have those numbers yet. So let's go to the next one. This is again from the same source, Zero Deaths Maryland, but now it's focusing on Charles County. This is in 2024 as of the last month, but up to the current month or last month in 2024. So in Charles County, we've had 19 deaths, and they include 1 mature driver, 3 pedestrians, 3 motorcyclists, and 2 bicyclists. So again, and you can see in the next column below that the 4 were speed related, 3 was aggressive driving. I kind of put those together, but they separated out. Distracted driving, that's a big issue with respect to people texting and getting on their phone. The word impairment, I suspect, means some kind of a medical issue. And then unrestrained occupants, I assume they were not wearing seatbelts. So that's that's 1 too many. And then I hope you can see it. There's a map that kind of shows the generalized location by these red dots of where these happen in Charles County. So you can kind of see to the north. Let me see, I get my cursor. You can see that's probably That's probably over near Indian Head or Bryan's Road. This is probably in the Waldorf area. This is probably down along 301. This is probably over to Hughesville and the eastern part of the county. So they're kind of clustered to the north of La Plata. That would make sense since that's somewhat of the population center. You have US 301, Maryland Route 5, and of course then you have Maryland 228 heading out to Maryland 210. So, and then you can see at the bottom, kind of a color coding of when these occurred. So you can see, looks like, I'm sorry, this is the day of the week, and then the hour. They're using the 24-hour clock, so 1400, I guess, is 2 o'clock. So you can kind of get a sense of where these accidents happen. Again, this is the latest that I could get for just Charles County. So that's, again, I'm trying to give you the perspective of the depth and what I believe is the critical nature of this problem with respect to reckless driving, speeding, and other related issues, and how it affects not only other cars, but also people walking and riding their bike in our community. So let me go to, let me go right back to the issue of speeding. Again, this is from Smart Growth America, and I quote, "Streets are designed for speed, and what happens then you have unmitigated carnage that follows." Okay, roads have been traditionally designed to see how many cars can we get from point A to point B and on this roadway at the fastest time available, and therefore the speeds. So our roads are not necessarily designed for everybody in mind. They are designed for the car, but not necessarily toward the growing trend of what we call micro-mobility or micro-transit. People walk, they ride their bikes, and again, it may or may not be as prevalent as we think here in Charles County, but I sense and I can visually see it when I walk and drive and ride my bike that it is increasing, and people are turning to that more and more often. But you kind of get the idea of speed and how speed kills. So if you were walking and you were hit by a car going 20 miles an hour, you have a 5%, less than 5% that you would survive. The blue means you do well, you survive. But look how it jumps when a car speeds up 10 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, and 45% will die. Okay, that's sobering. And then look at 40 miles an hour, 85%. And this came from the National Traffic Safety Board, who in turn, they get this information out, and Smart Growth America uses this as part of their Complete Streets program. And then look at the bottom, that quote, if you can read it. While there are myriad factors involved in these deaths, referring to the chart, our streets are designed to move many cars quickly at the expense of safety and everyone who uses them. And I can attest to that, and I'm sure you can too, how speed kills. So then this is kind of a busy slide, but it talks about, from Smart Growth America, a number of recommendations, and I'm not going to read them all. I'm going to highlight some of these, and the first one that stands out to me is people must come first. Okay, there are people who walk, ride a bike, or whatever, or they take transit because they don't have a car. So therefore, they're at risk when they try to walk or travel these highways with these high speeds. So we need to look at the total picture, not just the car, but people as well. Obviously, from the numbers that I see, and I've just shown you, this is not working. We need to take more action by the feds, the state, and frankly, the county and the town to see how we can fix this. And it's not going to happen overnight, and it takes a multifaceted process to fix it. And so what Smart Growth America has done, they say, well, you can't fix it if you don't know if it's broken. It is broken, and they relate this data, and that's why I'm showing it. And so every month, every year they do a publication called Dangerous by Design. And so they take the latest data from the feds and then relate it to states and metropolitan areas, and they show growing trends. Some of this information came from that report. In fact, these recommendations came from that report. So it's a great resource to really identify the problem, which I've just talked about. So we need to make sure we have this data so we can take action. So we have, frankly, in my view, been somewhat complacent. And again, this is personal for me. It means that we are very complicit in letting this continue, frankly, what I call carnage. And you've seen that word earlier in this podcast as well as video. So there are, at the bottom there are a broad spectrum of possible changes. The state, the feds, and local leaders can make some changes. Like for instance, in La Plata, we could talk about art or colored or painted crosswalks. We could have traffic circles or painted sidewalks or painted shoulders to narrow the traffic, to slow down traffic, and other visual aids to help folks slow down. And you'll see that more and more across the country, at least I've seen it. And in fact, the recent public meeting in June on the Charles Street Improvement Program talks about those kinds of issues. And I'll try to provide that resource or an access or that reference as well. Now, here's some specific local recommendations, which I would assume would apply to a county or the town of La Plata or Charles County. So therefore, look at these kind of issues. They must. We need to rethink how we approach this issue. It's not necessarily just designing a road for speed and to move cars from point A to point B. That's really not. I can show you. I'll just show you the numbers. That really doesn't work, and it creates very unsafe conditions. So there are opportunities to maybe do some quick fix demo projects that are happening all over the country, where folks would paint roads or paint crosswalks. They put up temporary barriers or cones to narrow the traffic lanes to slow traffic down. Another thing that we don't do necessarily, we do maintain sidewalks in La Plata, but we need more of them. We don't really have enough of them, and I suspect that's also true in Charles County as well. But we could do a better job of maintaining them and looking for ways to fix them or to connect them and to fix the ones we have. We could go out and do a parking curbside audit to assess how much parking is really needed here. I suspect we have too much parking. We could looking at specific road corridors. That's what they mean by context-appropriate speed limits. For downtown La Plata, I think it's 30, but perhaps that could be lower, given all the distractions in town, the left turns, the right turns, all the traffic coming out, all the signage and all the businesses. Perhaps there's a way to slow that down or have other ways to dampen and to remove those distractions. The state could apply for safe streets and road programs. There's some federal money to do that, and I believe Charles County or Maryland may have already started that process. We do in terms of La Plata, and I know that our police department works on it. We could improve our local data collection. And also toward the bottom now, we could maybe leverage improvements by when we make improvements to a road or something. Maybe we could restripe it or do other maintenance that could improve the shoulders or add sidewalks that could support walking and bicycling. And then finally, one of my favorites is to adopt and implement and fund a complete streets policy. I know the state of Maryland has had one since 2013, but they're now going through a review of that policy, and they're reworking it. They have a separate website where they're going to look at other states and how they do it, and hopefully they will develop more needed policy changes that could help the state highway and MDOT design better roads for all folks, not just the cars, but to help reduce risk for those who are walking, biking, or other ways of getting about, including transit. So I just wanted to kind of give you these kind of slides and some information. And I want to close by, I guess, making it personal, and perhaps I'm going to whine a little bit. But so I'm driving a lot more than I thought I would at my advanced age, but because I babysit my granddaughter in Baltimore, so we go there once a week, and then we go to Delaware. So I do drive more than I thought I would. However, two recent experiences have really shown me how dangerous it is out there. I was heading on northbound Maryland 5 right before you get to the Mattawoman Beantown Road intersection. That part of there was at 55 miles an hour speed limit, 2 lanes in each direction. I was on the right lane, so I get out of the way as you should be, slower traffic, get to the right. I was probably doing about 50, so a little bit below the speed limit. Not one, but 2 cars came along the side of me on the shoulder and passed me. And they were probably doing, again, I don't have a speedometer with me, but had to be doing over 70 when they went by me. That was pretty frightening. And then about 2 weeks ago, I was heading down Belott Newtown Road, heading out of La Plata down Route 6, turn right up down Belott Newtown Road, heading I guess east over to 301. So it's a 2-lane road. I believe it's 40, I think it's 45 to 50 miles an hour, 2 lanes, one in each direction. And as you may know, there's a hill you go down and you climb up this hill. So that's a no passing zone. The middle line is a solid line, which means no passing. I was doing about 40, 45. It's dusk, and a diesel pickup truck decides I was going too slow and passes me hauling a boat, going up the hill, passing me on a no passing zone. Again, that was kind of frightening. So, and I'll end my whining part of this by saying I have 3 brothers, 2 of which were both in serious auto accidents. Thankfully, both survived. One was a passenger in a vehicle in Maine on a 2-lane country road, and he was sitting behind the driver, and the driver took a curve too fast and hit a tree. My brother survived. Unfortunately, the driver and only child was killed. The other 3 folks in the car were injured, but not as bad as my brother. This was 25 years ago. He still has knee problems and had to have his knee replaced because of that accident. And unfortunately, not to be gross, my father and I went out to see the accident scene, and he hit a tree, and he was lucky my brother wasn't killed. Very unfortunate for the fatality of that accident. But again, speeding. And my other brother, he was in Florida. He was driving a car with his best friend on a 2-lane, 4-lane highway, kind of like 301. He's in the left lane, traveling, and he was going by a bus on the right lane. There was a crossover, and there was a car waiting to cross, and with a station wagon. I'm not sure they have those anymore, but back then they did. And this guy had his family in his car, and he decided, I'm going to see if I can beat the bus, not knowing that my brother was coming up on the side of the bus. He couldn't see him, so my brother hit him, he T-boned him. I never saw him until he hit him. Fortunately, no one was killed. My brother did get some glass. The car bubbles deployed, so they were somewhat minimized their harm, their damages, and their injuries. But my brother's friend did get glass in his face, and fortunately, the family survived. But when my father talked to the Florida State Police, because it was in Florida when this happened, he said there was nothing my brother could have done because he didn't have any time to react. This guy crossed right in front of him. So I just want to close with those, I guess, personal stories, and I guess I'm whining a little bit, but it really comes home for me now. A couple of weeks ago here in Clarksville, where I live, I was walking my dog at around 8 o'clock in the morning, as I usually do. I walk every day. Clarksville doesn't have any sidewalks. The speed limit is 25 miles an hour, and I was coming up to an intersection on East Patuxent Road where the side road has a stop sign. So I stopped right at the curb and looked to make sure the car saw me. I assumed, and I thought they did. So I started to slowly cross. The car either didn't see me or whatever, but did not stop. It was planning on going through the stop sign. It then swerved around me to avoid hitting me and the dog. So that individual had no desire to stop at the stop sign. And again, I live in Clarksville, so I see it every day when I walk. And the sad part about it is people who live there that do this. So it's very troubling to me, and I know I can't change others, but I wanted to do this podcast to point. It's really a problem and an issue. It just seems to be a lack of consideration for others. And you know, if somebody wants to be stupid and drive that recklessly, and they do harm to themselves, you know, that's on them. But think about the other damage and tragedy you cause to other people by that reckless driving. You don't seem to care about anybody else. And that's really, really unfortunate. So I would hope that someday folks pay a lot more attention to how they drive. I know I do now, and I certainly would admit in my younger years I probably sped too much, but I've learned some hard lessons from friends and family who've been in some auto accidents. And now that I have been a runner for 30 years, and now that I bike for the last 10 years, and I walk every day, it's a passion. So I hope folks will slow down, pay attention, and think of others. I appreciate everybody listening and watching my podcast. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me at djenkins@townoflaplata.org. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of your summer.